He is one of the hottest young talents in football at the moment, and what we saw from the 19-year-old's display at the Euro 2024 has got many football players and legends in shock. Keane swears that Kabby Mainoo is already doing the things that it took Keane himself 10 years to learn, and many others believe he is both the present and the future. So what does everyone think of Kabby Mainoo? Only one way to find out. Declan Rice is one of the best in the world at what he does, sitting deep and protecting the backline. Nobody trusts you to do that except if you've got a good eye for the game. So we trust what Rice's eyes see. Declan Rice wasn't capping when he said Kabby is ready to be in the big leagues. Rice had this to say recently about him. He's so good. People were questioning whether he was ready to play. I think you can see, this boy can be trusted. Whether you want him to play as a 6 or 8, his knowledge of the game. Those words from Rice reinforce the idea that Kabby isn't letting his age stop him from becoming a world-class player as a teenager. From one defensive midfielder to another, let's see what one of the greatest anchors in football history has to say about Mainoo. How good was the Frenchman Claude Makelele in his prime? The answer? He got the entire world calling his job the Makelele role. Makelele isn't just a football legend, he's a reference point for every defensive midfielder. Would we trust him to pick out a midfield selection? Absolutely. For Claude, he'd love to have Rice, Bellingham, and Mainoo on his team. As far as Makelele is concerned, Kabby is one chef that should be allowed to cook. Here's what he said. I think Mainoo, will add some spice to the midfield. Even though Makelele thinks Mainoo is already good enough, he throws in a word of caution and encourages the youngster to keep learning from other greats. One of his suggestions is for Mainoo to also take a leaf out of Michael Essien's book. While we're bringing up names that belong to the list of top midfielders, we'd be insane not to let you guys know what the great Paul Scholes thinks of Kabby Mainoo. Everyone knows pleasing United legends is like walking a camel through the eye of a needle, just because the standards are so high, and rightfully so. However, it is a little different with Mainoo because he's got Paul Scholes excited. The Manchester United legend highlights Mainoo's calmness, awareness, and knack for scoring big goals in big games as the 19-year-old's strongest traits. You bet someone would have asked Scholes if he thinks Mainoo could become a United legend like him someday. Let's hear the man himself. I read a few comparisons between me and this kid last week. Don't waste your time, he is 10 times the player I was at 19. Well, who do we have next? Lamine Yamal being a freak of nature at 16 makes everyone forget that 19 is still so young to be doing the sort of stuff that Mainoo is doing. How many 19-year-olds get handed the keys to a midfield like we've seen with Mainoo? It's for this reason that another football legend, Clarence Seedorf, says this about him. He reminds me of a young me, with his body and movement, but the thing he has that I never did is his maturity on the ball at such a young age. The sky's the limit for him. Seedorf, being generous with praise, also talked about Mainoo's on-ball personality. He's not afraid of getting balls in traffic, which is good. He comes out of it really nicely many times. Just his personality, head up, meaning that I have control of the situation. But it's not just Seedorf who thinks that the Manchester United Academy product holds the key to the midfield. If you've got an Arsenal legend waxing lyrical about a United player, you'd better believe they're onto something. Wright, who scored 287 goals in his career, did not hold back in blowing the trumpet for Mainoo. Being a striker means trusting the players behind you to feed you quality passes on a plate, and that's something Wright knows. Wright trusts Mainoo with the ability to make the transition from midfield to attack. Here's what he said. Give him the keys, because when you look at the way he plays, his calmness, his maturity for his age, the positions he picks up, you've got a player in midfield that can progress the ball with such calmness, such fluidity. In Ian's world, Kabby is the perfect conductor to make things happen. And that's why he added, just let him play, let him be the orchestrator. And does Mainoo fit the bill for who a great orchestrator should be? We think so. Being an orchestrator means letting the different parts come together to work as a beautiful whole. It's putting pieces together and making everyone see the magic that fragmented pieces can become. For Phil Foden, Mainoo plays this role so well. In his words, from the first day I trained with him, I could tell there was a connection. We were linking up really well. He makes it easy to play with him. Foden has excelled under the tutelage of Pep Guardiola. Do you think Man City would make a sneaky move for Mainoo in the near future? or maybe they would have been relegated by then. Gary Neville certainly thinks so. Look guys, he probably said this comment with the pain of having a dagger to his heart, but it shows just how much he meant what he said. For Neville, Mainoo is good enough to play under the very best of coaches like Pep Guardiola. Here's what Neville said: "The biggest compliment I can pay him, and it hurts to say this, he looked like a Manchester City player. That's a player Pep Guardiola will be looking at and thinking, I want him." Seeing a Manchester United legend acknowledge the greatness of Manchester City just puts into perspective how much things have changed over the years. But there's someone else who sure knows that Mainoo can play. Everyone remembers Mata's sweet left foot. His connection with the ball made ball striking look like poetry. He sure knows a thing or two about making the sport look easy. Speaking about Mainoo, Mata said, "I'm really impressed with Kobbie. I haven't seen much of him before, but he looks like he's been playing for the club for much longer." Speaking of feeling like Kobbie's been at the club for ages, someone else is already forecasting what his future might look like. Mainoo's teammate Casemiro is full of praise for him. Casemiro is sat in midfields alongside greats like Kroos and Modric, and yet even he sees the gem that is Mainoo. Casemiro said, "I would say that if Kobbie continues the way he's going with this mentality, continues training hard and doing things right, Manchester United will have a great player for the next 15 years. 15 years is super deep into the future. Isn't it too early to be making such predictions? Let's talk about someone else who lived up to the hype he got as a wonder kid himself. As far as wonder kids go, Wayne Rooney is the ultimate example of a wonder kid career gone right. Manchester United's all-time top scorer sees Kobbie as someone that can walk in his footsteps as a promising talent turned legend. The first evidence for Wayne is that Kobbie plays in a position that requires discipline and game understanding, and he's handling it pretty well. There's no doubt in Rooney's mind that Kobbie will become one of the absolute best players in the world. Wayne even sees a bit of Bastian Schweinsteiger in Kobbie. As he reflects, "I think he's been incredible at such a young age. The maturity is shown. When you see any young player break into the first team, they can seem a bit raw, but he reminds me of a young Bastian Schweinsteiger in how he plays." Now that's some serious praise for the youngster, but we are just getting started. It's pretty safe to say that almost everyone is on the hype train for Kabby Mainoo, but Mainoo has got his critics as well. Graham Souness blasted the youngster and called him naive and also not understanding his position following England's defeat to Spain at the Euro 2024 final. According to Souness, Mainoo wanders too far from his position in the midfield. Souness believes that Kobbie is yet to fully understand his role as a midfielder. But anyway, what are your thoughts about Kobbie Mainoo, and how would you rate his performances so far in his young career?